All right, in this what we're going to do is create a mask with an animation. So we're going to duplicate our existing Movieclip button, or we could use the shape one. It doesn't really matter. So I'm going to duplicate one of these, and this will be my sample MC mask button. And I can drag that out here. And I'm going to double click on it, and just so I can tell that this is a different button than the other, I'm just going to change some properties about it. So I might go ahead and change some, let's do some changes here. You know what? The color effect is kind of a pain. I need to get that back to 100. Aha! There we go. So that's an obvious change, at least. So there, it'll be orange. So I'm going to duplicate that orange keyframe to there, and again to the end. And then I do have to replace the animation here with a classic tween. And of course, I'd need to add the easing that I had so it's consistent with the other ones, if I want to do that. It doesn't always mean that you have to have the same animation, because you can actually have different properties animate at different speeds, and it can create some pretty unique things. When you have one animation using one easing value and the other animation using a different easing value, that can actually give you some unique looks. Anyway, you'll see that it's now orange, going to orange, then it goes green like the other does before, and then it goes back to orange. So we had to replace these three keyframes at the end and the beginning. And then, of course, if we wanted to edit the middle, we would have to duplicate those keyframes as well. So the other thing that we have is our dynamic text here, and we don't necessarily have to have this animation, but it works just fine. Now we're also going to add one more element to it, and this is going to be just an animated ball or square or something that we have coming into it. So I'm going to create a small square that's on the outside of this, and I might go ahead and give it, maybe a white fill or something like that, and move it over just a little bit. And this is going to animate in with a shape tween. Why not? So at beginning, it's going to be outside of the button, and then I'm going to create the same state. At the end of the over state, it's actually going to be animated so it's inside the button. So let's move it over. Then we need to duplicate that state, and of course, take the original state and duplicate it to the end. Now we can do our shape tweens, and you'll see that we have an animation of it coming in and then going back out. So let's go ahead and test this and see what we get. Now you'll notice that we have that animation here, but I need to get just enough to the edge so that you see this kind of problem. If you hover over it, you'll notice that that particular graphic that we have that's actually animated outside the button is actually being monitored as a rollover because it is part of the background of the button. And that can cause some problems. So one of the things that we can do is start playing around with masks in order to hide that so that we don't actually see it visibly until it's inside the mask. And as long as it's inside the mask, we can actually create a much more reliable rollover. So you'll see, obviously, this is having some problems. So to fix this, we go into the timeline, of course, of this button, and I'm going to create a new layer, which is going to be called mask. And this can be called box or whatever you want to call it. This is going to be the mask, and I'm going to take the original background layer and duplicate it up to the mask just by clicking on the keyframe and using the Alt key and dragging it up. Now we'll right-click on that layer and choose Mask, and you'll see that the box is now masked inside that layer. Now we can actually add the other elements as well, the dynamic text and the background, to be underneath the mask as well, and that won't really matter because anything that's inside that mask will actually be part of this animation. So I need to lock all the layers to actually see the real effect. That mask is just being used to make it so that anything outside the mask will not be used as a hover state for this button. So let's go ahead and test it. And you'll see we did fix that animation with a mask. And that's much more reliable. Now you can't move to the left of it and have any sort of crazy rollover. So much more reliable way of doing it. Now, we can do other ways of doing this. I have this little section here, animations inside the masks, and it's really the same thing, so I really don't need to create a new button to show you the next type of thing here. But you can create all sorts of different animations inside here. And just so you are aware, you can create as many layers as you want underneath this mask. You could have, the box coming in, and you could have something else coming from the top. You could have text coming through. You could have multiple text items that are animating at the same time. Make sure that you do have the unique instance name for that text. So if you do create anything that's going to be using ActionScript, then you need to make sure it has a instance name from its very first keyframe all the way through the entire animation of it. But you can create some very, very dynamic looking buttons by using a mask and hiding things that animate inside them. Now, when you do want to create more advanced buttons, then sometimes an invisible button is the right way to go. So I'm going to be showing you that in the next tutorial here, which is just adding on to this, and we'll be showing you how this last button here works as well. So let's go ahead and save your work and go on to that.